Turn out the lights. The party's over. Another step backwards after another season-saving win against the New York Islanders. The Wilds get thumped 7-3 tonight. We'll talk about the special teams. We'll talk about the general lack of awareness in taking penalties. We'll take a look at the Tankathon standings. We got you covered here on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast after yet another lax loss. Let's talk it out on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast.
You are Locked On Wild postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another Locked On Wild postcast as the Minnesota Wild fall once again here tonight by a score of 7-3 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so in 2 games against the Lightning this season, the Wild have been outscored 11-4. I wish I could have seen this coming. Oh, wait, we did. As the Lightning scored 3 power play goals, the number 1 power play in the NHL, took advantage. And I would like to start tonight by striking a phrase from the record for the entirety of time. If I had $1 for every time I have heard, if the Wild could just keep this game 5-on-5, they would have a much better opportunity to win. And I've been guilty of saying this myself, but it just never happens. This is not a team that is capable of simply playing 5-on-5. Tons of penalties tonight, and I know some of them were suspect, but here's the thing. The MO of this Minnesota Wild team, right from the mouth of Pete DeBoer in last year's postseason. Craig Berube said basically the same thing against St. Louis 2 years ago. This is a Wild team that takes a lot of penalties. And so we are going to try to get them into the penalty box and take advantage. It's not a secret. And so if there are some instances in which Lightning players took penalties that were questionable, guess what the best way is to prevent a team from doing that? Is to kill the penalty off. And the Wild were incapable of doing that here tonight. And so we get another loss to a team that you should beat, a team that is in the postseason conversation, a team that you are trying to put yourself in the same conversation as, and you just mostly look like garbage. With laxical play, careless with the puck. And so, you know, we're going to get this. We're going to fight till the end. We haven't given up hope. And we're going to try to get ourselves into the postseason conversation. We're going to get that refrain in eternity until they are mathematically eliminated from that possibility. But at least make it look like that is what you're working towards on the ice. That's all. If you want to be a postseason team, look like one. And like that's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing. That's where we continue to be at with this whole thing. If you are going to be a team that is trying to get yourself mentioned in the postseason conversation, look like it. It's as simple as that. This is a tough back-to-back. This is a tall order for any team. You don't look like a playoff team. You haven't for most of the season. And so until this team goes on a 20-game winning streak or wins 18 out of 19, guess what we're going to continue to do is we're going to continue to take games like tonight, and we're going to say, hey, you're 4 points away from Columbus in the Tankathon. You have now created a 3-point cushion against the Buffalo Sabres because the Buffalo Sabres have won 2 in a row. So you're 3 points clear of the Buffalo Sabres right now, and you are in the 6th position in the Tankathon. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. The team continues to try to push for the playoffs, but my God, if you're going to, you have to win games like tonight, especially when you get out to the early lead. That's your thing. That's your MO. Early lead, 14-2-4. When you get out to the early lead, you score the first goal. But there was some greater good. Let's give Marco Rossi some stick taps for scoring tonight. And guess how he did it, folks? He scored the exact same way he has pretty much all season by just getting to the front of the net. That's why Marco Rossi is going to be able to push through any sort of a shooting slump because his brain is ingrained to go to the front of the net and just see what happens. And he scores tonight. He is able to kind of separate himself from Andrei Vasilevsky up front. And he continues to be up near the top of the list for rookies in scoring. Brock Faber had a couple of disgustingly good passes in this one tonight. Joel Eriksson Ek picked up his 18th goal of the season. Jake Middleton turning into an offensive defenseman all of a sudden. And so really liked what we saw from Marco Rossi tonight. So that fills our greater good quota in addition to the loss and getting yourself into 6th place in the Tankathon standings. So that's all good. But I don't know if I can do much more of having a cratered penalty kill. But here's the thing. I'm of the belief that at this point it would be easier to just stop taking penalties than it would be to fix this penalty kill. It's a double-edged sword. Teams that are called for a ton of penalties are going to be put under a lot of pressure to try to stop them. And I mean, I literally could not have said it any more times in the pregame show today. Tampa Bay is the number 1 power play in the NHL. You can't give them additional opportunities on it. And they go 3 for 3. Like, you can't make it up. But again, it's a loss that keeps you in that 6th spot in the Tankathon standings. And we get some of the same things after games that we just continue to get. It's the same old kind of motion things that we get of this team hasn't given up. This team they haven't done this. They haven't done that. I got to respectfully disagree because it looks like it just continues to look disjointed. And so this is probably going to be an 0-3 week for the Wild. Tonight, tomorrow night against the Florida Panthers, Sunday against the Carolina Hurricanes. That's a nightmare for good teams. The Wild are not one of those. The Wild are 27th in the NHL right now for a reason. Because this stuff just continues to happen. So, I don't know. It depends on your perspective. Depends on kind of where you've been at. Because honestly, if you are in the kind of greater good mindset, tonight's game shouldn't be super frustrating. Now, maybe from a turnovers perspective, maybe from a careless with the puck perspective, maybe that's frustrating. I think it's, again, it's amazing how you can give up 7 goals and still look pretty good doing it. Filip Gustavsson, I thought, had some really good moments in this one tonight. But if you're careless with the puck in the defensive zone, you give additional opportunities. I mean, at one point, there were like 4 consecutive turnovers in the defensive zone that led to unguarded shot attempts by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there was one, and I'm going to just point this out. I'm not going to be too critical because Dakota Mermis has had some really, I think, really good play overall this season. But that turnover that he had on the right side of the defensive zone, where he just basically stopped skating, that did not look good at all. Like, you got to you just got to keep with it. But there's been far too much of that this season. And so we got to quit wasting time from the mouth of the general manager himself. That's another game wasted. It's another game that you've wasted out of, well, let's just because I'm feeling petty, let's just do the math and look at the number of games that have been wasted this season. Then we'll take our short pause and then we'll get back to your comments here for tonight. I see Denny in the chat, see Travis, see Bob, Mike, Dolan is in here, Jason, a lot of our regular cast and crew hanging out. Ron is here, NASCAR Kelly's here. A lot of the regular cast is here waiting to sound off on tonight's game. And so we'll get to those comments here, but just look at the number of games this team has wasted. The Toronto game on the 14th of October, 7-4, wasted. Los Angeles, 7-3, wasted. Columbus, I remember that game vividly because the Blue Jackets were on the second night of a back-to-back, and the Wild did not look even bothered to show up. 5-4 overtime loss, wasted. 6-2 loss to Philadelphia on the 26th of October, wasted. 3-2 shootout loss. I'm going to say, Washington losing 3-2 in a shootout. I'm not going to count that in the wasted column. Losing 4-3 to New Jersey, not going to count that in the wasted column. Some of those competitive games where you come up just short, I'm not going to count those as wasted. But Dallas losing 8-3 to the Stars, wasted. Losing to the New York Rangers on the road 4-1, wasted. Losing to Detroit, the game that got Dean Evison fired on November 26th, wasted. Losing to the Calgary Flames 3-1, wasted. Losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning on January 4th, 4-1, wasted. Losing the back-to-back to Dallas 4-0 and 7-2, wasted. Losing to Arizona 6-0, wasted. Losing to Tampa Bay 7-3, wasted. That's like 15 games that you've wasted. I don't get it. Again, we are in the greater good. We're team greater good. So I should be thankful that those are all points that were not taken, that have led to this team being in the top 10 in the Tankathon right now. So let's move on. I want to get to everybody's comments here to break this one down because somebody said something on Twitter that made me laugh a lot. And so I'll share that too. We'll get to your thoughts in this one. Denny already with some A+ questions in the comments. So we'll get to all of those as we continue tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. The Minnesota Wild lose by a score of 7-3 to the Tampa Bay Lightning, but the greater good has been served in this one tonight. We'll continue tonight's Locked On Wild postcast after this. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by Jace Medical. Folks, I know we come to the wide world of sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin, right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That is a scary thought in and of itself. I can't imagine a family member getting sick while a supply chain issue causes them to miss out on life-saving medication that they need. Thankfully, we'll be okay, though, because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, amongst others. These can pop up at any time without any warning. Visit jacemedical.com to complete your physician encounter, which will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It has never been more easy and important to be prepared than today. Head to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, head to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's jacemedical.com, offer code Locked On. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast also brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is the matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Folks, my favorite part about Indeed from an employee's standpoint is that Indeed will take a look at my qualifications compared to the jobs I'm looking for and will ask me if I'm proficient in particular skills to try to better help me match up with open positions. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Minnesota Wild fall by a score of 7-3, but they serve the greater good. Let's get to the comments section here tonight, already in elite form in tonight's postcast. We'll start with Ron, who caught my penalty rant at the beginning. Every team has suspect calls against them. This is very accurate. Again, the thing that needs to happen for this Minnesota Wild team is you just have to kill them off. If you want to get a team to stop taking liberties, kill the penalties. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to happen. And this has been an MO for this team for years, is they take a lot of penalties of every variety. It's an equal opportunity penalty team. They take a lot of different types of penalties, and they can't stop them on the penalty kill. I mean, I don't know if these stats are updated with tonight's action, but if we look at it, the Minnesota Wild have been flirting with dead last on the penalty kill. Yes, these are not updated as of yet. So heading into tonight, the Minnesota Wild were at 72.8% on the penalty kill, and they throw up a goose egg in tonight's action against the Lightning. The Lightning were a perfect, neat, and tidy 3 for 3 on the power play, so my guess is that number is going to drop them probably to second to last or dead last. So awesome there. And you look at the penalty minutes, Minnesota Wild currently 4th. Tampa Bay is just behind them, but Tampa Bay has an 80% penalty kill. So, yeah, they get penalized a lot, but they're able to at least kill off a penalty, which is something that the Minnesota Wild just have not been able to do at all this season. Denny joining us as always here tonight. What's happening, Denny? Boldy with no shots tonight. That is what we like to call unacceptable. It is. Boldy finished the night with 14 minutes of ice time and had one shot. That was the only statistic in which he registered in 16 shifts. 2 minutes of power play time, 12 minutes of even strength time. That's not going to get it done ever. And you look at Boldy with the very quiet 14 minutes, Marcus Johansson with 12 minutes, 26 seconds of ice time. He ended up taking a penalty, and beyond that was really not all that effective. The one that is interesting is Freddie Gaudreau, because John Hines didn't have an update after the game. And so, again, I repeat, for the people that have been on the camp of let's just get healthy, the Minnesota Wild are playing the most miserable game of Oregon Trail right now to ever have been played. You get dysentery, you get bit by a snake, your wagon capsizes in the river. I took that joke from Alex on Twitter. That got me. I thought that was really funny, but it's just like the board game. You go from one thing to the next, and you're not going to have any point in this season in which you are fully healthy. So that was never something that was going to be sustainable for this team, no matter how much we tried to convince ourselves that it was an outcome that was going to happen. It's just not. Now, you had the news today that Jared Spurgeon is going to have not one, but two surgeries, a hip surgery and a back surgery, that he tried to play through. He tried to get himself in position to, I don't know, kind of play through it, and obviously that didn't work. So we talked today about the potential to maybe explore a trade to try to free up some much needed salary cap money to maybe inject another top six forward into this mix. That's not going to happen. Trav is dead on when he says that there just is not going to be anybody at this point with his age, with now his extensive medical history. Jared Spurgeon's contract is, for the most part, locked in. Maybe when it gets to the final year of the deal, if you're not competitive, you can move him at the deadline. But obviously rough for Spurgeon. Look, it's when I'm critical, it's not any sort of a personal thing. I just think that we've talked quite a bit about the fact that Brock Faber is just seemingly a logical replacement in pretty much every key area for Spurgeon. And the sooner we can get that going, I think the better. We've seen a little bit of a baton pass this season with Faber getting power play time. But I think we're going to end up seeing him on this roster through the end of that contract, which that's going to be an expensive contract by the time that is finished. Let's move on to Dougie. When do we give up hope? Can we send Mermis back to Iowa and call up O'Rourke or Lambos? Mermis has played good, but he's 30. He's not a prospect. He's a career AHLer. Yeah, this is something that has been discussed too. Is Mermis was never a blue chip prospect. He is more of a 4A guy, if we're using a baseball analogy. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Rao. Good in the AHL, but just never really able to get things put together at the NHL level. And full credit to Mermis. I thought he's had some really good moments this season, but it just seems like at some point the bill kind of becomes due, and it seems like he has had his play start to kind of tail off here a little bit as the season has worn on. Now, in tonight's game, Mermis had 15 minutes of ice time. He had 14:28 of even strength if you look at the numbers defensively, Bogosian actually led Wild defensemen in ice time tonight with 23:38. He led in even strength time at 21:35. Next was Brodin at 22:47. Then Middleton at 19:19. Faber 19:52. So Faber was technically third. But in even strength time, Faber had 15:49. And so, that may be more of a product of just how things played out in this one tonight. But man, you'd love to see Faber get, 2 or 3 more minutes of ice time. And I know he spent 4 minutes in the box. So you take those 4 minutes and you put those into his minute count, and he's up at about 24 minutes. So yeah, that's probably about right. Then Damon Hunt with 15:47, and Mermis actually was fewest minutes amongst Wild defensemen with 15:06. Hunt had 14:10 in the even strength time of ice and 1:37 on the power play. So, defensively, the D-corps was not great in this game tonight by any stretch. But honestly, there isn't anything glaring from a minutes point of view that I would change. It just so happened that they were mostly awful in this one tonight, but they weren't the only ones. Like, just go through the list of forwards, and people were just turning the puck over like it was hotcakes. Not great. And so for Mermis, the fact that Spurgeon is out for the rest of the season means that the Wild are going to be able to afford to call people up. So I wonder if we start to see a little more of that now that the Wild know what the prognosis is for Spurgeon, that he's done. And Guerin said that they were going to be looking for a pending unrestricted free agent defenseman to throw into this mix. Hard pass on that from my perspective. It just does nothing for me. I would much rather see Damon Hunt be given an opportunity. And in this case, as Dougie mentions, maybe you give O'Rourke or Lambos the opportunity to see what they can do at points here throughout the rest of the season. Just, I don't want anything to do with bringing somebody else in to take one of those spots of Mermis or Hunt. Honestly, this is going to sound like blasphemy considering how I've talked about them throughout the season. Honestly, if you need somebody to fill in a pinch, like if you're on the road and somebody gets hurt, you're better off with one of the traffic cones. I mean, at least they would serve the greater good by being terrible. But I just don't want to see another defenseman injected into this mix to try to prop this team up, this team that's already on like 18 sets of crutches, try to prop them up for a playoff run. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not in my esteemed estimation. Magic number is 11. Denny, you may have elaborated on this as I scroll through the chat, but if not, at this point, magic number, get me up to speed as to what this magic number would signify. Now, if it's consecutive losses, I'm in for that, as long as the team looks semi-competitive here and there. Like if we just zombie walk through 11 games, I'm gonna start doing these postcasts on the floor, because it's not fun to try to pull things to talk to from these types of games. Obviously, having the greater good has helped, but especially if it's the same things that are causing the losses, it just gets so repetitive that I have to write the date down or write something down on a piece of paper so that I can look at it and make sure that I'm not just living the same time loop over and over and over. Let's go to Dan, who is going to the game against the Hurricanes on Sunday, sure hoping for a better outcome than tonight. Hurricanes are a good team, so that's going to be a tricky game, but I mean, even if it's competitive, like that's really the only qualification at this point. Like, wins don't need to be more than here and there. Just be competitive. That's all I am asking for the rest of this season. Jason joining us tonight. No way we're making the playoffs when our defense is going have speed and turnovers on simple passes, and our penalty kill is horrendous. Welcome to Team Greater Good, Jason. I know you've been on the bandwagon here for a little bit. Yeah, that's we're at the point of just kind of realizing and being able to admit out loud that this isn't working. And so rather than try to continue to prop it up, the thing that I'm hoping for at this point is that we just continue to see these types of, and now again, I'd much rather see competitive games, but if you just see this sort of thing play out to the trade deadline, then there's no chance that this team is going to try to acquire somebody to try to prop themselves up for a 2-month playoff run. The odds are squarely next to impossible. So if this is what it takes to just get this to be okay, we're not going to do it this year, that's the greater good. As much of a S taco as this would be to eat the rest of this season, if that's what it takes, that's what we're going to do. Denny getting the squad put together for the 27th. Tom Reed's it is. So I'll be swinging by before the game. I'll plan on getting to the X plenty early to drop off my stuff, and then swinging in to say hello. So if anybody is at Tom Reed's before the game on the 27th, stop in and say hello, to wish Denny a happy birthday, and to see the illustrious host of Locked On Wild in person. Dolan Olson, hearing that Tampa has number one, then seeing the Wilds get penalties was basically giving them a goal for free. Yeah, they gave them 3 goals for basically nothing, which was it just not great. Bob joining us tonight. They just act like their skates are full of lead. It is amazing how just much this team can just Jekyll and Hyde from game to game. You go from the Islanders game where everything looked great, dominated the second period. But hey, didn't we call it that the Islanders are just kind of the get right game for the Wild? But you go up against, and this isn't like, apologies to Lightning fans, this isn't a juggernaut Lightning team. I don't think they would have any issues with me saying that. It's not a juggernaut Lightning team. They have some outrageously good players, though. Kucherov, Stamkos, Braden Point. They've got some great players on that roster that just continue to get it done. Don't forget the goalie, Vasilevsky, too. So they've got some good players, but they're a 500 team. And these games were not close, hardly at all, in the 2 games against the Lightning. If you can't beat teams that are, and Tampa Bay's on the outside looking in, if you can't beat them, you are not, Maury Povich, a playoff team. It's as simple as that. Steve joining us. Sounds like Billy and the team are on different pages. That was a rough one to watch. I did have somebody respond to one of my tweets on X that that Billy is saying, I believe that this team is going to compete for a postseason spot, and the team has just committed to the tank, which is something that I'm going to hold out hope that that's the case, that the team is just in on it at this point, because that would explain why some of this looks the way that it does. Now, obviously, that's tongue in cheek. That's not what's going on, but I think that would be funny. Funny to have that be the case where the team is just like, look, we're not going to do it. And they all collectively believe in the greater good too. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. Jason noting Gus doesn't seem like he's 100% out there. I don't think he is. And he looked better in this one tonight, but like he actually was the sole reason I think that the Lightning didn't put up a 10 spot in this game tonight. But this is why this is kind of one of my angles that you can make a tank look like it's not, because there are like 6 players on this roster that are fighting through injuries right now that probably should not be playing. And so if you put them on, and I know you've got to, like, there are other things that go into this that I simply am just refusing to acknowledge, like the cap floor. Like, you only have a certain amount of money that you can put on long-term injured reserve, and Jared Spurgeon is eating a great deal of that. So obviously there are some things that need to be taken into consideration, but like, if you've got players out there that clearly are not at 100% and they're pushing because you're trying to get to the playoffs, you tell me what's better suited. Trying to get them fully healthy so that they can help you next year. Again, I think next year is going to be a tall order for this team too. Are you better served trying to get them healthy so that they can help you in future seasons, or running them down like the pencil sharpener in elementary school, where you sharpen the pencil until it's about like that? It seems like a pretty obvious answer for me, but yet we continue to be here. Dan mentioning another good one that I missed in the wasted column was blowing that 3-1 lead to the Philadelphia Flyers. Yeah. Wasted. Denny brings up another good question. Why is Marcus Foligno getting second power play time? So if we look at this roster, and it could have been, I would hope that it's I would hope that it was simply due to injuries to, say, Gaudreau, and I think Johansson got dinged up at one point too. So maybe that was why. And if that's the case, if he's in there because somebody else got hurt, I still don't really like it, but I guess I can understand it. But if he's getting power play time just because, like, hard pass. And he did get almost 2 minutes of power play time out there tonight. He got 155. Matt Boldy had 2 minutes. Joel Eriksson Ek 155. Marcus Foligno 151. Ryan Hartman 150. Marcus Johansson 155. Kirill Kaprizov 156. And Marco Rossi 154 were the leaders. Matt Zuccarello with a minute. Pat Maroon with 106. Connor Dewar and Brandon Duhaime also with like 6 seconds each on the power play. I don't know. I would rather see somebody else than Foligno get out there. But if that leads to continuing the greater good and continuing to keep this team in top 6, top 10 draft pick status, throw him out there on the top power play. Brian joining us tonight. We are now officially the team/game the other team circle as a must-have 2 points. That has changed quickly. Yeah, you think Florida's licking their chops? Second night of a back-to-back against a team that just surrendered 7 goals to the Tampa Bay Lightning? Folks, the Florida Panthers are #good. They are second in the Atlantic, 27-13-4 on the season so far. And that is even with having lost 3 games in a row. So Can you say slump buster tomorrow night? And they've got Sam Reinhart, who has 33 goals. Good luck stopping him. But their goaltending has also been very good this year, too. Sergei Bobrovsky, 21-10-2 with a 2.46 goals against average and a 9.11 save percentage. Anthony Stolarz, as their backup, not bad either, 6-3-2. It's a Florida team that is just really clicking on a lot of cylinders up until recently. So, again, I really don't feel like it's out of the realm of possibility to say that this team's probably going 0-3 this week. They could accomplish that quite easily. And then the final 3 games of the month, I mean, I would have said circle the Ducks game, but guess what? You can't even circle that as a guarantee anymore. Like, let us embrace the greater good, embrace the losses, allow them to keep you in the top 10 in the NHL draft standings so that you can end up getting an actual impact prospect for your prospect pool starting in June. Don't ask me what that was. It was somebody else took over at that point. Just put up my Frosty the Snowman and Pylon John cutouts. See, if I was somebody who is really, really good at graphic design, I could whip something together here that we could actually use for graphics in the. Now I'm gonna have to try to do that so that we can insert those into the postcast. I'll work on that. See what I can come up with here by the time we get done. I'll see what I can come up with by tomorrow night. Like, let's be real here. That's going to become my sole focus for the next 24 hours. So we'll see what we come up with, and I'll share whatever I put whenever I get put together. Tracy joining us. We need an official stance. Are we committed to the tank now? Until it is made clear, half the people here will be mad at bad plays while half will celebrate. We're going team greater good for sure, because greater good allows you to point out some of the good things that the youth do. Tonight's example, Marco Rossi scoring again, and Brock Faber making some just unreal level passes in a couple of instances. You know, we could technically consider Joel Eriksson Ek as part of the greater good. He continues to, he's going to shatter his record for goals in a season, his own personal best. He's probably sitting on a 30-goal season here. And so that's a guy that's squarely in your core. So there are some greater good bits, but this is the thing that's going to always be. And again, I'm going to make this very abundantly clear, because I have had people on social media that seem to think otherwise. I am never going to tell people how they should root, because I know there are people out there that watch this team that are perfectly fine with this team being in the conversation for the postseason, 100-point seasons the last 2 years. I am not going to gatekeep anybody that is okay with this team being good enough to keep your attention through the regular season, put up some wins, and maybe they hit a team at the wrong time in the postseason. Maybe the team that they play in the postseason throws up a dud. Like, if you're somebody who enjoys watching this team and seeing them have 90 to 100-point regular seasons, you are not going to get any grief from me, which is why, again, I'm going to continue to, for those people who want to try to see the positive side of this, I'm going to continue to keep an eye on, here's what it would take to make the postseason. Me personally, I don't think it's something that is achievable this year, but I will never be somebody that gatekeeps and tells people how they need to celebrate, how they need to approach this season as a fan. That's not something that's in my wheelhouse. Soapbox over. That's the last time I will that's the last time I'm going to get into that. Ryan Hartman seemed lost out there tonight, as Jason points out. And yeah, I will say too, I was kind of fighting through day job today too. So I had the game on in the background while I was trying to do all of that. So I saw the overall production of the game, but some of the little detail stuff didn't have as much time to be able to peek through. But just look at the overall production. 2 shots for Hartman in 15 minutes. And again, like, this is just a common refrain from this team, is that there just are so many passenger minutes. Maybe that's something that the Minnesota Wild lead the league in, is passenger minutes this season. Maybe see if that is an area in which they lead. Like, there just are so many games where you look up at the end of the game and you're like, where was Boldy? Where was Kaprizov? Like, now, to be fair, Kaprizov has certainly picked his play up, but you get these games from Boldy here and there where you just a guy. You can't have that for a guy of Matt Boldy's caliber. As Brian points out, in fairness to Gusty, there were some really fortuitous bounces for Tampa Bay. 3 of the 4 goals minimum that ended up in the net. Yes, this is a good point too, which is why I had pointed out as well that I thought Gustafsson played. I thought he played well tonight. You know, that's about as well as you can play, giving up 7 goals. There was one that was deflected in. That was the Steven Stamkos shot. I nearly broke my own jaw ramming my head into the wall on the Stamkos shot, because it's not even going to be in the realm of the net. And all of a sudden it deflects in. The one that popped up in the air and Gustafsson couldn't see it and it fell behind him into the net. There was some stupidly bad puck luck for the Minnesota Wild in this one. But again, like, it's another one of those games that just gets, like, so many people just get lost in the shuffle for a team that is adamant that they cannot waste any more time. Add another game to the wasted column. Dan pointing out the most frustrating part is seeing the guys who could be deadline movers playing poorly. Even if the Wild decided to be sellers, returns would be lower than what they should be. This is accurate too. Like, who are you pointing to as players that you're going to get anything for? Like, does anybody... And look, Pat Maroon played well at the beginning of the season. But is it just me, or since he has gone back down into a bottom 6 role, he just does not look like the same guy? And I know he kind of is... I don't know the best way to put this. He's kind of clunky out there. Like, he's not the most fluid skater sometimes. And so it just looks like... I don't know. So you're not going to probably get a ton for him. You'd probably get a pick if you trade some of these guys, but Dan's right on here, is that so many players that you could even consider moving are just not playing well at this point. Like, it is just this perfect storm puts George Clooney's perfect storm to shame. And it's at the absolute worst time that it could happen. Billy Joe McGrath will be selling, as I said. They have the tour bus, 4 massage tables, a skate sharpener, 2 ice baths, and a portable sauna. Yeah, I mean, if you're up for any equipment upgrades, they might as well start pulling some stuff out of the X if they're going to do some upgrades. Like, see what you can get for that here before the trade deadline. Who knows? Quadrum joining us tonight. I can be okay with the Wild sucking for a bit as long as Boldy, Rossi, and Kaprizov continue to score. We need our stars to continue to stay hot until we can get this cap hell over with. This will be part of the focus for greater good, is trying to see development from those young players and hoping that, like, you can still lose games while also having Kaprizov, Boldy, Rossi, Eriksson Ek, Faber, amongst others. You can lose games while those guys still continue to play well. So that's the best case scenario at this point. And there will, I'm sure, be stretches where they maybe don't. But overall, if you can have those guys playing well the rest of the season, that's the greater good. Lose games, stars playing well. I'm going to acknowledge this comment, and then I'm going to take it off screen because it's not going to happen at the trade deadline. Now, depending on, and again, the Wild are adamant that they're going to back up the Brinks truck. If you get an inkling that the situation has become untenable before the no movement clause kicks in, then, but not now. I would rather see this, as Dan notes. The Wild should plan to use long-term injured reserve to retain salary as a broker for deadline deals rather than try to bring someone in to shake up the roster. This is a smart business decision. Like, you keep enough cap space to be able to call up players and field a full roster. But the moment I saw the comments, I just rolled my eyes. Hardest pass of all time at bringing in a impending unrestricted free agent defenseman. It does nothing for me. It does nothing for me at this point, and it never will. So it's never going to be something that I can get on board with. So I would just rather they don't do it. Trav pointing out, I think teams call on Maroon, Fleury, and Duhaime. Duhaime will be the first to go. So here's the thing. Duhaime brings you that speed. He brings you that high motor. That's appealing as a bottom six piece for teams. You don't think the Florida Panthers could use a guy like that? And he's from Florida. Maybe that's a spot that he would go in free agency, but honestly, like, I think he will end up being somebody that does get dealt. And, Maroon could be a fourth line guy for a postseason team. The interesting one's going to be Fleury, because all signs point to nothing happening there, but how quickly can that change? That could change 2 or 3 times between now and the trade deadline. All Fleury has to do is agree to waive, and then you're in business. And there are teams out there that could use some goaltending, to say the least. Teams that have actual postseason aspirations. So Fleury is the intriguing one, depending on how things play out here between now and the end of the season, trade deadline. Let's go to Denny once again. Mermis is a third line player. He should be. And I would rather see that than I'd rather see that than somebody else getting that spot. Like, just don't entertain it. Because what are you going to do? You're going to bring in a veteran who is on the slow side and we've done that. We already did that. We already did that with Zach Bogosian. And I, for the most part this year, have been perfectly fine with what Bogosian has done play-wise. He's had some clunker games. Get in line. Everybody has. But like, just let Damon Hunt have the spot. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace the fact that you can get a young player some much needed opportunities. And it's just, folks, it's too perfect. It's too perfect the rest of the season, because you have Brock Faber, who should never, unless injured, be taken off the top power play unit. Give Damon Hunt the opportunity to run power play number 2 and just let them do it. Whether they make mistakes, guess what? That those power play units have gone 10, 12, 14 games in a row before without scoring goals. Let those guys have the opportunities to learn so that next year you don't have to rely on Jared Spurgeon at all for power play time. Just let them learn and grow. There is also some talk about what to do with the captaincy for the rest of the season. I'm going to have to look as to how this plays out, because for those that maybe don't know, I have zero hockey background. So a lot of this I'm learning as I go here in year 3 of hosting this show. So I know when when a captain is injured, you assign maybe an additional A to fill that leadership spot. But beyond that, I don't know what would be done about the captaincy. I mean, again, I'll say I think Brock Faber is ready now to be that guy. You're probably not going to give a 21-year-old the captaincy. Joel Eriksson Ek is a fine next in line, but I don't know, because this team is way too committed to a leadership group that has been trounced in 2 straight postseasons. And it's concerning to me the number of times in which we have heard players say that what is happening is unacceptable. It's like 6 different times we've heard it this season, and it just continues to be unacceptable. I don't know. It could be, I could be completely naive to this, but I feel like losing should bother you. And I know it's a long season. There are games that you're just not going to be even remotely close in. What's the old baseball adage? Tom Kelly, the only manager to lead this team to a championship. So I feel like he kind of knows what he's talking about. Wasn't the quote, in baseball, you have 60 games that you're going to win regardless. You have 60 games you're going to lose regardless. And what you do with the rest is what determines if you have a good season or not. So let's think about that from a hockey perspective. You maybe have 30 games. No, that's too many. Let's say 25. You have 25 games that you are probably going to win. 25 games that you're probably going to lose. What you do with the other 32 will determine how your season goes. And for the Minnesota Wild this year, now that analogy doesn't work for the Boston Bruins last year, because I don't think they lost 25 games total. But what you do with that middle portion, it feels like the Wild have squandered almost all of those already this season. So again, you tell me if I'm off my rocker here. Bob, I never hear about the work ethic during the offseason other than Rossi. Stamko works all summer. Joe Pavelski's out skating, shooting, and practicing hand-eye coordination to deflect pucks. Yeah, this is this is an interesting one because I feel like this comes down to a reporting angle. Like some of it gets reported, some of it doesn't. Obviously, because of the season Marco Rossi had last year, his off-season conditioning and such was a huge focal point because Michael Russo and Joe Smith are incredibly good at what they do. So they were able to get the nitty-gritty details on how that all went down. I know like players put in the work in the offseason. But like it just there's so many different ruts of effort, it seems, during the season. Now that's the stuff that you can kind of dig in on because it feels for me that should be non-negotiable. Like look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a great example, by the way. The Wild have struggled with them tremendously all season. Philadelphia is a fantastic example of what happens when you as a team never stop working. You go into the third period trailing by 2 goals. They never stopped fighting in that game. They continued to try to push. And the Minnesota Wild got a 2-goal lead and they said, hey, that's probably going to be good enough, right? So we can kind of ease off the accelerator just a tad, not a ton. And look what happened. They ended up losing in overtime. Effort feels like it should be non-negotiable for me, but again, that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm here at this microphone and not on an NHL bench. Brian says, use the rest of this season as an extended tryout, get a high pick, grab more assets or picks, then build for when cap restrictions drop off. All is okay. We were spoiled by dodging the bullet until now. Yeah, this is, I like this. I like this stance. This is a really, really good level-headed stance as to where we're at. Because the last 2 seasons, while fun, 2 seasons ago, that was a blast until the postseason. Last year had some fun moments too, but they were propped up by, I think, aberration type numbers. 2 seasons ago, it was the just flood of goals masking special teams problems because the Wild just dominated at 5-on-5. Kevin Fiala was subtracted from that mix. I had gone pretty much all season without mentioning Kevin Fiala. And folks, I'm going to be completely honest here. As much as I miss Kevin Fiala, I'm not going to beleaguer that point because I still think that is trending towards a win for the Minnesota Wild on Brock Faber alone. He's been that good, but you see what losing that type of an impact offensive player did to the Wild offense from 2021, 2022 to 2022, 2023. He scored like 40 fewer goals. But then last year they were propped up by beyond Vezina-worthy goaltending from both Gustafsson and Fleury. The special teams issues still existed. It's just that the goalies made a lot more saves to prevent power play goals from being scored. And so this year you get neither of those two things. This is what this team has been the last 2 seasons, just without the fluff propping them up. And so, we enjoyed it the last couple of seasons. But where this team is at right now, like it's like a fighter near the end of their career or at the end of the fight when they can barely get up off the mat. Like, are you better served continuing to try to get up and just continue to take punches and body blows? I don't think so. Jeremy, would we rather see the Iowa Wild and the Heartlanders make the playoffs this season and follow their heavy hitters in the minors this year? Personally, I would love to see a Heartlanders playoff run. It'd be nice to have a little bit of postseason in the in the Minnesota Wild organization. I know the Iowa Wild have dealt with a ton of injuries this season, which has made things incredibly difficult for them. To be honest, I haven't had a ton of focus on the Iowa Heartlanders as of yet. If they're trending towards the postseason, I will be rooting from the front row for that. That would be fun to see some young prospects in this system put themselves in position. But honestly, you know what's going to happen if the Minnesota Wilds continue to fall further and further out of this? I'm going to start throwing some more support behind the PWHL, who won again in overtime over Montreal. What was that? Tuesday night? They continue to win, and I'm working on getting some guests that can talk PWHL to try to accommodate some more coverage there. And that would be a fun angle to kind of dig into, especially if they play well enough to go on a little bit of a postseason run. So you can count on the fact that we'll keep a better eye on them going forward. And if the Wild season becomes more and more lost, we will double down on Iowa and the Heartlanders as well. So we'll have variable enough coverage for you down the stretch to where we're not just screaming into a microphone about giving up power play goals again or guys getting into the lineup that shouldn't. Greater good will prevail. I finally have caught up. Denny said 11 more losses and we're done. See, this is what I thought. This is what I thought you were getting into, Denny, was that because I saw your comment from the other day about the Wild realistically have to go like 27-12 in the final 39 games to be able to get to the postseason. So thank you for jogging my memory onto that. That feels like a pretty accurate, because again, if we go off of that Hockey Wilderness article, 95 points is kind of the benchmark. And in order to get to that point, you got to get 54 points, which means easiest way to do it is to win 27 games or become an overtime sponge. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to become a team that is just, let's just get it to overtime so we can get our point. No, I would be more frustrated with that than I would this team continuing to try to push for the postseason. So beyond that, I see the Kaprizov comment again. I'm not going to beleaguer it. Jeremy, the Iowa Wild have a 403 points percentage right now. Fifth and fourth are 439 and 485. Yeah, that's probably not happening then. So I think we probably throw our support behind the PWHL and we go full greater good for Minnesota Wilds here the rest of this season. Dewar and Duhaime should be on the second power play. I'm here for this. I just don't see the appeal, I guess, of slower, more physical guys on a group that's trying to score. So let's talk about this just for a second. As I continue to run through just another A+ comment section for another A+ Locked On Wild postcast. Is your goal not to have more speed on a power play to try to A, score quicker, or B, be able to quickly get back up the ice after the opposing team clears the puck? Is your goal not to have a need for speed? Again, I could be crazy, but it feels like that is something that you would want to maximize on a power play unit. So putting Dewar and Duhaime in positions to at least try it, like that's the other thing too, is at least give it a try, because good Lord, another game in which the Wild do not get a power play goal. That's got to be, we've played, 44, I think, at this point in this season. 18, 21, and 5. So they're 18 and 26. Yeah, 44 games. They've probably had 28 or 29 without a power play goal. That's gross. Like, we don't need that at all. Denny is predicting a Wild win for his birthday. So there have been a few wins that I have been hoping for the back half of the season. Fleury's 552nd and this Ducks game. I would be okay with the Wild winning against the Anaheim Ducks. I can put greater good off to the side for that one. We got to get Denny a win for his birthday. Let's get up off the mat. Wild, talking to you. Let's get up off the mat and let's get a win on Saturday, the 27th, for Denny's birthday. I think that would be the operative route to go there. NASCAR Kelly joining us tonight. My birthday is Monday of the All-Star weekend, but I'm considering making a drive to Chicago to see the Wild play the Hawks. Maybe. Well, if the All-Star break is the next benchmark as to let's just get to this so that we can restart our season again, then, maybe they come out of the gates swinging and beat the Chicago Blackhawks to start off the second half of the season and then lose the next night. I feel like I'm being way, way too cynical, but this is what this season has done to me. This is where I'm at right now. Do the Karnak skip from Johnny Carson, find the hat, and you're either on something or on to something. What do we think? I should do more skits. I should do some more just funny things to break up this season. Come up with another song. Hold an envelope to my head and try to guess what's inside. I'll keep that in mind, Brian, and we will we'll get some of that in here the second half. Trav calling it a night. Thank you for joining as always, Trav, and we'll do this again tomorrow night after the Florida Panthers game, which is that's going to be a rough one. I will check with Alex and see what he's doing for that game on Saturday. I'll see what we've got going on for that Sunday matchup against the Ducks. All right, just looking through the other comments here as I get caught up. Now is the perfect time to play the kids and see what we have. Denny's spot on as usual. Yeah, Jeremy, we should have kept Kalen Addison. I don't understand why we traded him instead of getting rid of Merrill. Yeah, that was a Dean move at that point, and not great. Not great at all. Dougie bringing up a good point. Honestly, we have to consider the possibility that Spurge may not play at a competitive level again. Hip surgery and back surgery both could put an end to his career. This would be a very deflating blow for this team, because then I don't know what happens with the contract. There has to be some, if he were to have to retire, there has to be something in there that protects the team, because I'm worried about a similar thing happening for him that happens with Parisian shooter. So I'll have to look into that too. Kind of, that'll be something that I look at and just mention in an episode as to, what could happen there. But we'll see. Jujhar Khaira hasn't played since December 16th. He was helping the Iowa Wild, definitely, even if his Minnesota game was a massive dud. There have been some very, very rough injuries that have just destroyed this team, this organization throughout the full I lost my train of thought. It's just injuries have ravaged this entire organization, and it's not great, but it happens to everybody. It just seems to happen more here than it does elsewhere. So beyond that, I think that is a good point to call it for this evening. Hour 16 minutes strong in tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Even though the Minnesota Wilds were not able to come away with the win, again, we served the greater good. Oh, Jeremy talking about how long some of these Iowa Wild players have been out. Sweeney's been out since the December 23rd. Yeah, not great. All right, we're going to call it a night. Everybody, thank you for hopping in here as always. Denny, Dan, Tracy, Mike joining us here tonight, Ron joining us, Diane, Bob, Jeremy, Trav, all of our usual A-listers in the comments section joining us here tonight. We appreciate you hopping in here for this one. As Dolan notes, we'll probably be back talking about we will be back, but it'll probably be talking about a second consecutive loss. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure to hit the like button before you leave. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We've got an episode in the hopper for you tomorrow morning as well. So appreciate everybody tuning in. And you can continue to find all sorts of Locked On Wild content by subscribing to Locked On Wild on YouTube or following on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any of these amazing Locked On Wild postcasts or any episodes throughout the week as well. You can find new content every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.